Archive loading.
There are places on this map that do not exist anymore. Not officially. They are the rot in the concrete, the rust in the iron. We leave them behind, thinking they are empty. But in the dark, nothing is ever truly empty. Welcome back to the Blackwick Archives. Tonight, we are opening File 002. We are going to 3 locations that were left to decay. An asylum in upstate New York that holds a voice that isn't human. A steel factory in Detroit where the shadows have mass. And a lonely fire lookout tower in the Appalachian woods where the watcher became the watched. Turn off your lights, put on your headphones. Let's enter the archives. Our first record comes from a partially redacted police report filed in October of 2014. The location is a former tuberculosis sanatorium, deep in the woods of northern New York. For legal reasons, we cannot name the facility, but locals know it as The Hill. 2 urban explorers, whom we will call Alex and Sarah, decided to document the decay of the building. They were experienced. They knew the rules. Take nothing but pictures. Leave nothing but footprints. They entered through a basement window around 11 p.m. The atmosphere inside was heavy. Sarah described it later as stagnant, like the air itself had been holding its breath for 50 years. The silence was absolute. Only the crunch of peeling paint and broken glass under their boots echoed through the massive, empty corridors. For the first hour, everything was standard. They explored the administrative wing and the cafeteria, but then they decided to go up to the 3rd floor. This was the isolation ward. The rooms here were smaller, the doors were thicker. As they walked down the main hallway of the 3rd floor, Alex stopped. He grabbed Sarah's arm and signaled for her to be quiet. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. At first, Sarah heard nothing, just the wind whistling through a broken window somewhere far away. But then, she heard it. It came from the room at the very end of the hall. Room 302. It was a voice. But it wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a moan. It was a clear, distinct sentence. "It's okay. Just come inside." The terrifying part wasn't the words. It was the voice itself. It sounded exactly, and I mean exactly, like Alex. Sarah looked at Alex. His face had gone pale. He hadn't spoken. His lips hadn't moved. He was standing right next to her, gripping a flashlight with white knuckles. That's my voice," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. From the darkness of room 302, the voice called out again. Same pitch, same inflection. "Sarah, come here, look at this, it's okay." Alex shouted down the hall. "Who is there?" Silence. Then a sound of movement. Wet, slapping sounds, like bare feet running on wet linoleum. But the sound wasn't coming from the floor. It was coming from the walls. Alex shone his high-powered flashlight down the corridor. The beam cut through the dust and darkness. And for a split second, they saw it. Peeking out from the doorframe of room 302 was a head. It was pale, hairless, and its eyes were wide. Too wide. It didn't have a nose, just 2 slits. But its mouth was moving perfectly as it spoke in Alex's voice again. "Why are you running, Alex?" They didn't wait to see the rest of the body. They ran. They sprinted down the hallway, crashing through debris, not caring about the noise. Behind them, the mimicking stopped. Instead, the hallway was filled with a high-pitched, shrieking laughter that sounded like a dozen people screaming at once. They made it to the car. They drove until the sun came up. They never posted the photos. They never went back. because they realized something that night. That thing in the sanatorium wasn't a ghost. It was a predator. And it used human voices as bait. There is a different kind of fear in industrial ruins. It smells like oil, rust, and old blood. File B09 takes us to the Rust Belt, a massive abandoned steel mill on the outskirts of Detroit. The plant had been closed since the late 90s after a series of workplace accidents that were never fully investigated. Mike was a private security contractor hired to patrol the perimeter. It was an easy job. Keep the copper thieves out. Don't ask questions. On a Tuesday night in November, the temperature was freezing. Mike was doing his rounds in Sector 4, the Smelton floor. This area was essentially a cathedral of iron, huge vats, catwalks, and hanging chains that disappeared into the darkness of the ceiling 50 feet above. As Mike walked past the old blast furnaces, he felt a wave of heat. He stopped. This place had been dead for 20 years. There was no electricity, no gas. There should be no heat. He took off his glove and touched the side of a massive iron vat. It was warm, vibrating slightly. Mike grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Mike. I've got activity in Sector 4. Machinery feels active. Static, no response." Then the sound began. Clank, clank, clank. It was the sound of heavy chains hitting each other. It was coming from above. Mike directed his flashlight upward. The beam wasn't strong enough to reach the very top of the ceiling, but it illuminated the hanging chains. They were swaying violently. There was no wind inside the factory. Mike unholstered his weapon. "Come down now!" he yelled, his voice echoing off the metal walls. Something dripped onto his shoulder. He touched it. It was thick, black, and warm. It looked like oil, but it smelled like copper. Like blood. He looked up again. This time his eyes adjusted to the gloom. The chains weren't just swinging. Something was swinging on them. High above, in the rafters, a massive shape was moving between the chains, like a spider in a web. It was huge, maybe 7 feet long, and covered in rags that looked like old worker uniforms. But the limbs had too many joints. It stopped moving when the light hit it. Slowly, the thing turned its head upside down to look at Mike. Its eyes reflected the flashlight beam like a cat's eyes. Bright yellow. Then it let out a sound. It wasn't a roar. It was the sound of grinding metal, a mechanical screech that made Mike's teeth ache. The thing let go of the chain and dropped. Mike didn't wait to see it land. He ran for the exit door, the sound of heavy metallic claws skittering on the concrete floor behind him. He slammed the heavy steel door shut and locked it. From the other side, a massive force slammed against the metal. Boom. Then again. Boom. Mike quit the next morning. The company told him it was just settling foundations. But Mike knows the truth. The factory isn't empty. Something has made a nest in the iron, and it's still hungry. Our final file brings us to the most isolated place of all, the Appalachian Mountains. There is a theory about these mountains. They say they are older than the bones of the earth. They say that if you go deep enough into the woods, you enter a place where time works differently. In 2019, a man named David was hiking a remote trail in West Virginia. A severe thunderstorm rolled in faster than predicted. With night falling and lightning striking the ridges, David needed shelter. He spotted an old fire lookout tower on a nearby peak. He climbed the rusted stairs 60 feet into the air. The trapdoor was unlocked. He pulled himself up into the cab, the glass-walled room at the top of the tower. It was a glass cage in the sky. David laid out his sleeping bag. The storm raged outside. Rain lashed against the glass. Lightning turned the night into day for split seconds. Around 2 a.m., the rain stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. David woke up, feeling like he was being watched. But that was impossible. He was 60 feet in the air, miles from civilization. He sat up and looked out the window. The moon was trying to break through the clouds. Down below, at the edge of the tree line, he saw 2 small, pale lights. Reflections. Eyes. David thought it was a deer, or maybe a bear. He tapped on the glass. "Oh, go away!" The eyes blinked. Then they began to move. But they didn't turn around to leave. They moved forward, towards the base of the tower. David grabbed his flashlight and shone it down. The beam hit the metal legs of the tower. Whatever it was at the bottom of the stairs. But it didn't use the stairs. David watched in horror as a pale, elongated hand reached out of the darkness and grabbed the steel support beam of the tower. Then another hand, then a foot that looked more like a hand. The creature was climbing the outside of the tower structure, and it was fast. It moved like an insect, skittering up the vertical beams. David scrambled backward, pressing his back against the center map table. He was trapped in a glass box, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. He watched the pale hand slap against the window pane. Then a face pulled itself up. It was human-like, but stretched. The skin was pulled tight over the skull. No ears, no hair, just those 2 reflective eyes staring through the glass. It didn't scream. It didn't try to break the glass. It just smiled. A wide, impossible smile that revealed rows of needle-like teeth. It pressed its face against the glass, fogging it up with its breath. It watched David for what felt like hours. It tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Mimicking David's heartbeat. When the sun began to rise, the creature simply let go. It dropped 60 feet to the ground, landed on all fours, and scrambled back into the dense tree line. David hiked out that morning. He never hikes alone anymore, and he never, ever looks out of windows at night. These are the files from the archives. 3 places, 3 anomalies. The sanatorium where voices are stolen, the factory where the shadows feed, and the tower where you are never truly alone. Which one would you survive? Or rather, how long would you last? Tell us in the comments. And if you have a story, a file that needs to be opened, send it to us. Subscribe to the Blackwick Archives. We are always watching. End of recording.